Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice 8-game Major League Baseball slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? I really do like the slate today. It looks really solid. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's check the weather first, though. Let me pull that up here. So the weather for this slate looks like it's going to be fine, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue weather-wise here. There could be some wind issues in Wrigley Field, but that's the only real thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this slate now. First off, I'll say that I do think this slate has some decent potential for home runs today. Though there's some spaces where that definitely is higher risk, but I do think it's going to be a pretty solid home run day. Uh, and so I think it's a pretty interesting slate, though I do think the early games have more of that potential. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the pitchers here. So, sorry about that. All right, so we have some top heavy pitching today. It's kind of a strange slate for pitchers because a lot of teams don't project all that well, but none of the pitchers really have a ton of strikeout upside today. I mean, we have three that have decent strikeout upside, but they don't look particularly great, kind of due to matchups and things like that. So let's go ahead and look at these. Flaherty first is a GPP play on the slate. He's got a matchup against Seattle, which on the surface is pretty favorable. His strikeout rate has been pretty decent lately. He is the most expensive pitcher. The only real issue here is that he really doesn't have 35 fantasy point upside for the price. In the mid 20s, definitely possible. And he's been pretty consistent at that. So I think he's a viable play, though he's just the most expensive pitcher on the slate. And Seattle projects well, despite the fact that this is not uh, the best situation for them. He definitely looks interesting on this one, but he's not a must play. Gilbert for Seattle is an extreme GPP play today. Now he does have an absolutely terrible match against the Dodgers, but he's been pretty solid and he has a high ceiling. The question is how many Dodgers can hit him, which, with Otani and Freeman and all that, it's gonna be tough for him. So he's definitely a contrarian play on the slate, but he's definitely somebody to consider. Looking at Austin Nola, sorry, I don't understand Austin. Aaron Nola for Philly against Atlanta today. Atlanta, this series does look like it's going to be tough for pitchers, and um, well, he does project decently well. He's definitely in a higher risk situation, but he will be pretty high owned along with Flaherty. So he's definitely a good contrarian away from Flaherty, but he definitely carries some risks here. Uh, Nestor Cortez for the Yankees has a tougher match against Cleveland. He didn't fare particularly great the last time he played them with giving up a couple home runs, but I do think he's a viable option here because he does have some potential, but he's very high risk, high reward. And the K rate is a little bit concerning against a team that doesn't strike out as much. Max Fried has really been inconsistent this season, and since he's been back, he's been okay, but he's had some rough games. I don't love the matchup here because Philly does have some bats that can do a lot, and he has given up 8 earned runs in 2 games against them already this season. The strikeouts are also a bit of a concern here, so while he is in play, he's very extreme risky play. Jameson Taillon is a burn or bust play for me for the Cubs. High risk, high reward type of situation. He doesn't have a bad matchup, but he's also not got much of a strikeout rate here, so he's definitely a risky play, but he's a little bit cheaper than some of the other guys. Probably my favorite value option, Ryan Peapot for Tampa Bay. He has a favorable matchup against Oakland. Now, he did have a game where he gave up 2 earned runs against Oakland earlier this year, but he scored 20 fantasy points in that one. And he really hasn't been terrible when it comes to giving up home runs. So he definitely has the potential to be a solid play on the slate, and he can get the 20s even if he gives up a couple earned runs to the Oakland A's, who have tendency to do pretty well against for a home run perspective. Now his strikeout rate isn't great, but he's definitely somebody I'd consider as a viable option here. Tobias Myers and also Kyle Gibson are very burn or bust plays on the slate. I don't project that they're going to give up a lot of runs, but they definitely don't have enough strikeouts to make them super viable here. I am avoiding Lorenzen for Kansas City. I think Angels look really solid today from a hitting perspective, and he has almost no strikeout potential. Rodriguez is definitely a guy that's a boom or bust against Cincinnati. Same with Spence against Tampa Bay. I do think Tampa Bay has some bats I do like, though. Nick Martinez is a low-owned upside guy. that has some potential because he won't have much ownership, but he definitely can have a good game here. He's got enough strikeout potential in this particular matchup to give him some utility, though it is high risk, high reward. Though he's been better on the road than at home, and he really hasn't been terrible when it comes to giving up home runs too much. And Toronto doesn't look all that great today. I am avoiding Cueto for the Kansas City, but he is a Hail Mary play against Kansas City, rather. I do think Kansas City has a lot of upside in this one. Cantillo is an avoidable matchup here against the Yankees, and Maeda is a very avoidable. It could be that Brisky plays instead, but whoever starts for Detroit, I like the Cubs a lot there. So let's look at our catchers. Um, Now this position is decent today, but it's high risk, high reward. I think we have one guy that's kind of a nice value play, though, that definitely looks good. But Salvador Perez is the top play here for Kansas City. He's got a good match against Cueto, who has not pitched yet this season. So I think that Perez has a lot of pop today, and Kansas City has a lot of upside. He's a little pricey, but you can get a little bit cheaper with pitching today and pay up for him if you want to, as he does have good hitting metrics. Now, Cal Raleigh, he's got the tough match against Flaherty, but he does have good home run metrics today, so he's definitely worth a look from that perspective. But he's kind of a boomer bust play from in that way. Now, David Fry is a nice value play for Cleveland against the Yankees. I don't think Cortez is going to last super long in this game, and Fry has been good against the Yankees this season. If he ends up drawing the start, will definitely be somebody I'm going to try to roster, especially with that price point. Now, the top ownership, Freddie Furman, and Tyler Stevenson. Logo to Hope, Cal Raleigh, JT Realmuto, David Fry, and Salvador Perez have low-owned upside potential at this position. Looking at first base, we do like Ohtani a lot. He is one of the top hitters in baseball for good reason. He's got home run metrics as normal. So does Freddie Freeman. But if we want to get a little bit cheaper, we can look at Pasquantino for Kansas City. I really like Kansas City today. He's been solid against Angels this season. I think this is going to be one of the higher scoring games on this entire slate. And he definitely looks like he's been hitting the ball very well lately. He's definitely somebody I consider. But if you want to go super cheap here and help you pay up at other positions, you can go Cavadas for the Angels. Even though he's only played a couple games, he hadn't done much yet. He's had strikeouts in those games. I think he does have some potential for a good game here. So he's definitely somebody to consider as a dirt cheap play to help you pay up other positions. He will also have a lot of ownership here, along with Tyler Black. Some other ownership guys, loan guys, Brandon Lowe, Spencer Steer, Ohtani, Bryce Harper, Salvador Perez, and Ty France, excuse me. But Pasquantino, definitely my favorite here outside of Ohtani, and then go cheap to help you pay up other positions. Now, one thing I'll say is a lot of positions today do have some value where you can look at some good information. So I think a good way to go cheap. So I think that first base is not the only place you can do that, but it's definitely one of the better options from that perspective. Looking at second base, though, we look at Gleyber Torres, who is one of our top core plays on the slate. He has absolutely fantastic metrics today. I like his hitting upside, and he's definitely somebody I'm going to try to roster quite a bit. Jorge Polanco for Seattle also looks like a very good contrarian play away from him. Now, I don't like, going up against Flaherty today, but Polanco's been really solid lately, and he definitely has a lot of potential. Kind of a bit of bust play, though, because that matchup is not ideal. Looking at Brandon Lowe for Tampa Bay, he's been inconsistent this season, but he does have home run metrics at times, and today's one of those days. He won't be a super high owned, but he's definitely somebody to consider. Michael Massey also looks really solid for Kansas City. I do think making a couple of Kansas City lineups where you stack that team is definitely a viable strategy today, and he looks really solid from a good matchup metrics perspective. But I do like Torres the most, but you pretty much stay in the $4,000 range at this position a lot of different ways. But Torres, Brandon Drury, and Michael Massey will be the top ownership along with Chris Morel. Low-owned upside guys, Brandon Lowe, Jonathan India, and Edmundo Sosa. Now, Will Wagner is a $2,400 play. He has kind of not done much the last few games, though, so he's a little bit concerning, but he is cheap, and he can help you pay up other positions. Looking at third base, Jose Ramirez and Alec Boom definitely jump off the page of the top overall plays. But if we want to go cheap here, Josh Rojas is a good way to do it. He's got more favorability than some of the other cheap options, but he does have that nasty matchup against Flaherty. I really don't know what to make of the fact that Seattle just looks pretty good today, despite the fact they got the super tough matchup. But a guy I really like at this position, Isaac Paredes, for $4,300. He's nicely priced here. He's been hitting the ball very well since he joined the Cubs, and I do think even though he's struggled the last few games, he's making contact. He's not striking out a lot, so it's just a matter of him getting on base and getting the hits to actually go in the places he wants. But he actually has some good home run metrics today as well. The top ownership here will likely be Brandon Drury, though, and then low owned upside guys Jose Ramirez, Navali Marte Jr., Camarino, and Alec Boom. Max Muncy is a very good contrarian play if he's in the starting lineup for the Dodgers. Looking at the shortstops, Bobby Witt Jr., Mookie Betts, and Ella De La Cruz all jump off the page as really great plays. Though I do think Ella De La Cruz has a little bit of added boost today because he looks like he's primed for some stolen bases on the slate. So he's definitely interesting here. But I do like Anthony Volpe as well. He did very well for us yesterday, and I looked at him again as looking like he's got great metrics for this particular slate. But the ownership will be Ella De La Cruz, Bobby Witt Jr., and Zach Neto, and then Edmundo Sosa and Trey Turner are kind of contrarian plays. Now you can go super cheap again here with Trey Sweeney for Detroit or Miguel Rojas for the Dodgers if you want. So again, there's multiple positions that have some cheap guys that have some upside on this one. If we look at the outfielders, Otani, Julio Rodriguez, who's a little bit cheaper at $4,800. Aaron Judge and Mookie Betts are the top four plays at this position overall. They all look really solid, and you can actually fit in one of Judge or Otani in the slate because of the way pitching is, and because Lane Thomas and Taylor Ward look really good today. I really like both these guys, even though Lane Thomas has been a little bit inconsistent this year. He's got a very favorable matchup here, and Taylor Ward looks absolutely phenomenal today as well, as he's had some good hitting metric games lately, and he's paid off in those particular situations. Some contrarian plays at this position: Riley Green, Randy Arozarena, Jake Fraley, Michael Harris, Giancarlo Stanton, Kerry Carpenter, along with Jokinski Noel and Weston Wilson as the two kind of Hail Mary plays there. As for the ownership, Taylor Ward, TJ Friedel, MJ Melendez, Jake Fraley, Josh Lowe, and Juan Soto will probably be the most favorable guys here, along and then Loans upside guys: Lane Thomas, Otani, Jokinski Noel, Kerry Carpenter, Aaron Judge, Spencer Steer, and Kyle Schwarber. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. I hope everybody does well today.